The My Little Pony lore originally was non-existent. I know that saying that might seem weird, especially now, but it is true. Back in the first 3 seasons of MLP, the lore was almost non-existent. Sure, it was there, but in very small pieces. The show was far from being serialized, so continuity wasn't a priority. And because of that, it's not surprising that G4 had retcons. Now, not all retcons are bad. As the show grew, so did the concepts and stories. And most of the time, these changes were not bad, and in a lot of cases, these changes actually improve the initial concepts. But what happens when they don't, and the retcon, instead of helping the concept, makes it worse and makes you rethink the entire story? Well, that's what I want to find out today, so let's begin. I don't think it's surprising that G5 is here, and I'm kind of forced to put it here, but for as talked about it as it is, I don't find it as bad as people make it out to be, because the G4 aspects that G5 had weren't that prevalent. At most, they were quick or can be passed as references, and at worst, they were confusing. But one that really stood out for me was Discourse arc. Ironic because this is the arc that a lot of people don't mind in G5, but in my case, made me rethink everything the G5 comics were going to be. The story itself was fine, and Discord is okay, although I can't imagine this Discord being the same one as the one in the show or comics. But that's the least of his problems, because the thing that ended up killing this entire arc was his backstory. We all know how this goes, right? Discord did some less than great things, got encased in stone until the main 6 freed him and reformed him. That's how his story went, but G5 said,
"You're fucking gone, dude! You're fucking gone!"
Now, apparently he never was encased in stone or reformed, but rather he was imprisoned in a mirror for 1,000 moons, despite the fact that we see him with Fluttershy in a later comic. I don't know why the writers in G5 chose to do this. It doesn't add anything new to Discord's story, nor is a change that was necessary. And this is why whenever I talk about the G5 comics, I always say that it's in its own universe. But hey, at least it wasn't as bad as... So how many of you remember this arc? Yeah, I bet not a lot of you do, and honestly, I don't blame you. It barely got any focus on the show, or comics, or even in the books. But that doesn't mean it wasn't explored, and the first pony to be Rarity's apprentice was Charity Sweetmint. I already made a video a while back about her, but long story short, she was a canceled fashion designer that also was a big fan of Rarity, and the way that she expressed it was concerning. As in the book, she took Rarity's place on Ponyville. She acted like her, looked like her, and even talked like her. And Rarity, understandably so, getting upset at her and needing to teach her that she can't copy someone else's life. And while that might sound like a crazy synopsis for the story, believe me, it gets even crazier in the book. But it was an interesting start for a brand new arc and a character, and one that I can't wait to... Well, that was unexpected. So Charity's character got retconned. Why? Well, because they could. And in her place we got Coco Pomel, which, you know what? She's fine. Compared to Charity, she was very shallow, and I do say that as a whole. Personality, her episode, and even her story. Because, yeah, does anyone remember that Coco actually had a story in G4? No? Well, I don't blame you, and it was one of the most insulting things that the show ever did at that point, and I'll tell you why. Because she was given everything without even trying. No, seriously, in her first episode she becomes Rarity's apprentice because she gave Rarity the first place trophy. She didn't struggle, oh, okay, maybe she did a little bit, no build up, just this. Well, that was disappointing, but hey, maybe she does more in her next appearance. Ha, no. And that's a trend that Coco Pomel had. For example, on issue 64 she gets her own boutique in catalog because she made some designs for Rarity. That's it. In one book, she was declared the best fashion designer in all of Manhattan. Excuse me, what? How? Well, she just is. And the reason why this absolutely infuriates me is that there's people that say that she deserved everything that she got. No, No, she didn't. Coco Pamela is the definition of a Mary Sue. She's liked by everyone and didn't work for anything in her story. Compare that to literally any of these characters and you get my point. And let's not forget that she defeated the purpose of being an apprentice, as ironically, I don't think Rarity teach Coco Pamela anything aside of believe in yourself. So what was her point? But hey, at least this can't get any worse. Are you kidding me? Why? Just why? Yona as Rarity's apprentice literally makes no sense, and it's not because she didn't try or because she doesn't have potential, because that's just not the case. What makes it bad is that it came out of nowhere. Since her first introduction, Yona never had an interest in fashion, which made sense at the time. The problem is that aside of her season 9 episode, we don't see her grow an interest for fashion, not in the show, nor in the comics. So, when it's revealed that she ended up as Rarity's apprentice, just makes you wonder how and why, and all of this could have been solved by, again, not retconning Rarity's original apprentice. And don't tell me that they couldn't include Charity in the show or comics, because that's just not true. We've had characters that began in the book that later appear in the show, so my only theory is that they scrapped her because her story would be difficult to adapt, which is sad, but hey, at least it wasn't. Starsoul the Bearded, often regarded as the most powerful sorcerer in all of Equestria, seen as an icon to some and a hero to others. Or that's what they told us. Yeah, in reality Starsoul was far from the character that he was hyped up to be in the show, and in reality he was a dumb, bitter old man that in all honesty, he was kind of a dumbass. How do you get scammed by the Flaming Flam brothers? But Starsoul wasn't always like that, and at one point he lived up to the title of Equestria's greatest sorcerer, and in some cases even hero, depending on which one you choose, because oddly enough, Starsoul is one of the most retconned characters in the entirety of G4. Not counting miscellaneous appearances and Equestria Girls, he was retconned 5 times in the run of G4, and all of them being way better than the one in the show. Take for example Starsoul in Reflections. This Starsoul is basically a funny old man that loves coffee. He's extremely goofy but also flawed, as because of a mistake he made, the changelings were born, as well as embarrassing Celestia with his antics, but that doesn't mean he was clueless. And in reality he acted like a father figure towards Celestia, guiding her in her younger years. Or what about Starsoul in Nightmare Nights? While we see him very briefly in the comic, this Starsoul is the same personality and story-wise to the one in the show. The difference is that this Starsoul failed to save and contain Stygian when he became the Pony of Shadows, something that backfired when the Pony of Shadows succeeded in transforming Celestia into Daybreaker. What makes this Starsoul incredibly interesting is the fact that he is a what if. What if he failed to save his friends, which just in concept alone fits better to the one in the show than the one we ended up getting. And hell, even Starsoul from Legends of Magic is better, and he was as interesting as a cardboard cutout. Which just leads to the question of why change a character that already had their story, personality, and even lore already defined for a completely new one. Again, the only thing that you needed to do was to adapt this to the show. And again, it's not like comic characters couldn't translate into the show, because that's just not true. Look at this. They were developed or redeemed in the comics, yet we saw them in the show, yet Starsoul didn't. It's pretty confusing to say the least, but at least he wasn't. Let me ask you something, who liked Trixie in season 1? No, really, who did? Trixie is a character that whenever I talked about her, I need to always clarify that I loved her after season 6, and for good reasons. In her debut episode she was infuriatingly annoying, and I get that that was the entire point of her character. I mean, the episode literally described her as a boastful unicorn, so it makes sense why she acted like this. The thing was that people defended Trixie for her actions, and apparently she was just acting, you know, because she's a performer, which was the biggest scope I've heard back in the day. As no, she wasn't. If she was, she would have acted differently while not in stage. But it didn't matter because the community loved her and fans demanded more Trixie in MOP, and we did in season 3. And yep, she was solid. While she still was the same infuriating character, she worked in the episode as the villain, and for a while that was the end of Trixie. Until the comics happened. And when the writers chose to bring back Trixie into the comics, I wasn't particularly excited as, again, what can you do with Trixie that wasn't already done?
What?
I don't know what is more surprising, that they made Trixie into a good character or that they gave her a good redemption story? Because, yeah, surprisingly the writers tried to redeem Trixie as early as season 4, and how they did it was by putting her in the wildest situations imaginable. From her being forced to be the queen of the Diamond Dogs to her being framed of a crime she didn't commit, becoming Manhattan's most wanted criminal, and Rarity, you know, the element of generosity, making her lose her job because she didn't like her. Wow. But aside of that, Trixie learned to be a better pony and to trust in others, and for how short this redemption was, just expanding 3 comics, it was a very nice way to end her character in a nice and meaningful.
Hello, princess. Trixie?
Are you kidding me? You chose to retcon everything she went through for what? A pretty alright episode. Why am I not more mad about that? Maybe it's because she's more developed. No, she acted like the same Trixie as before. But now she wants to change and get a redemption that actually feels more earned. Okay, don't get me wrong, Trixie in the comics did earn her redemption, but the one in the show is just better because we see more of it. We see her grow as a character, friend, and even as a hero, which honestly surprised me. And sure, they didn't have to retcon what already was established, but what we got in return was just a better Trixie as a whole. And one of the only retcons in this video that I'm not that mad about anymore. And hey, at least this retcon didn't ruin Trixie's story only for a useless piece of fan service. Who is the most disappointed villain in the show? For most is this one, but for me, it's Sombra. Sombra was an incredibly cool concept that wasn't utilized at all in his debut episode. Yeah, he looks cool, but that's really it. He is depicted as a force of nature that can't be stopped, yet he is stopped incredibly easily. But he did intrigue the fandom, so much so that he got a solo story in Reflections. But that one doesn't count because, you know. But then we got Friendship is Magic, a comic that explores Sombra's story and origin, where we got to see his relationship with his friend Radiant Hope and what struggles they went through together. All this made you care more about Sombra as a character and made him into a deeper character than the one in the show. And this just got better with Siege of the Crystal Empire, a 5-part comic series that took Sombra's development to the next level, as we get more lore about him and the Umbram, but also Radiant Hope. Many fans thought that she was going to be just Sombra's girlfriend, but that's far from the truth. We not only saw what happened after Friendship is Magic, but also what her loyalty and love for Sombra did to her. And aside of that, the comic humanized Sombra from the edgy boy stallion that he was to a tragic but sympathetic villain that was blinded by hate. And one that by the end, after he learns what Radiant went through, chooses to be with Hope. This was Sombra's story, and one that was made after fans demanded more out of his character, and I think IDW did a wonderful job, just for Hasbro to ruin it. I know that there's people who love Season 9 Sombra, and yeah, it's good to finally see his true powers in the show. I mean, it took 6 seasons, but who's counting, right? But not at the cost of his development. Did we really need to retcon his entire story for what essentially was fanservice? No, we didn't. Aside of some voice lines and funny moments, he brings nothing new to the show, and what makes it a little worse is that there's fans that think that the comics retcon Sombra's story, when in reality it's the other way around. The comics cover Sombra because the writers at the time weren't supposed to bring Sombra back, but because of fans, they did. And they give us an awesome story, just for the show to ruin it in later seasons. Or at least that's me. So what are your thoughts on these retcons? Did you like them, or do you think that they are as necessary as I think they are? Leave it down in the comments. And remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and remember to check out the Discord server if you haven't. As for me, I'll see you in the next video.